It's one of the few great motorsporting events that we've not competed on. And we won the Fareh's Rally with the original Porsche 959, but we never went to Dakar. That got taken back by the Porsche factory team before we went there. So, yeah, sometimes you look at all the motorsport achievements we've had, and just one or two still to collect, and Dakar's one of them. About 2 years ago, I forget what the catalyst was for the decision, but we sat down about January and said, well, you know, we'd done this, we'd done that, we needed to look to the future. What was on the horizon that we could take on as a challenge? And we had spare resource, design resource around the building, and so we said, let's put a team together to examine which areas we would look at. We looked at all sorts of different categories of motorsport, and we came down on the idea that Dakar was the perfect solution for us. It was, it played to our strengths, quite frankly, because we've got an organisation here that can take from design to manufacture to testing and then to operating on the program itself. Back in just under 2 years ago, we started 3 months' work of just designing the concept of what we believe would be the perfect Dakar car. And it came at a time when the rules are just changing. So the rules are shifting towards four-wheel drive, petrol, turbo engines. And so we said, well, let's home in on that. So we developed around that concept. And by the time we got to March, April time, we'd come up with a concept of what our car would be like. Normal convention says I would have gone to a car manufacturer at that point in time and said, you know, would you like to be part of this? But I happened to be in Bahrain at the time at the Grand Prix, and I spoke to the Crown Prince there and various other people, and they're very supportive of motorsport. They've got one of the best racetracks in the world. They own McLaren, or the major shareholders in McLaren. They've got all sorts of interest in motorsport in the region as well. And they were excited by the idea. The event was going to take place in their neighbouring country of Saudi Arabia. So they said, let's work together and see if we can build up a plan around it. Nobody wins in their first time in Dakar. And you know, it's a great truism that if you go to any motorsport event anywhere in the world, there will be somebody else locally who's done it many times before you, who will be far faster than you will be, and you should never underestimate them. So we've got the Minis, we've got the Toyotas, and we've got other local people as well. So I've got little doubt that with Sébastien and Nani in the cars, we'll be very fast, but you've got to be fast for 2 weeks, and that's going to be difficult.
The basis of the car is what's in the T1 regulations from the FIA. So these are four-wheel drive cars. They have to use lightly modified production engines. So we've got a 3.5 litre V6 that is taken out of a production car and only lightly sort of modified for the job. The minimum weight, which believe it or not is 1850 kilograms. So these are big, heavy cars. There are all sorts of restrictions on suspension, travel and layout, but outside of those sort of fundamental regulations, they're surprisingly free, and it's quite fresh compared to, say, WRC or most formula cars where you've got a very precise formula. As long as you stick within the basics of the T1 regulation, which is like, I don't know, 6 pages, not 60 pages. It was a bit of an eye-opener in terms of just what it takes in that environment in terms of attention to detail. But for this stage in the programme, really happy because it seems to be fast, seems to be good to drive, it seems strong. We've just got a few bits and pieces to tidy up over the next couple of tests. If we tried to make a car unbreakable, it would be a slow car. Yeah? And if we tried to make a fast car, we have to make some judgments about just what the car needs to stand. The drivers have to strike a balance because in testing they tend to go faster than they would on the event because they get to know the roads and they get to know the jumps and the bumps. And if they hit a bump first time round and they think, oh, that was easy, next time round they hit it hard. And if they get away with it that time, they hit it even harder the next time. And it's easy to say that's too aggressive, but in reality what you're doing is preparing for the mistakes they make on the event. They're not going to deliberately hit bumps as hard as they do in the test, but they will make misjudgments and they will go over jumps too fast or whatever. So whilst it seems severe when you're sitting in the car or watching the data, it's part of finding out just what the car can stand, and it does show up the weaknesses, you know. As you'd expect with a 9 times world champion, there is no question about his speed, but it's that effortlessness is not the right word, because it clearly takes a lot of precision and so on, but it's the unflustered way he goes about it. You know, if you were sat next to him and you didn't know, you couldn't tell whether he was driving at 80% or 100% because it's so effortless, I suppose is the only word I can think of. Yeah. There's a whole load of things that you can get from sitting in the seat alongside somebody like that. Obviously it's great to see how they drive, but it puts in perspective their comments. It gives you an insight into just what the car's got to stand. I mean, it's one thing to look at data, but it's another thing to experience. You know, what does a 15G impact feel like? You know, yeah, well, if you sat in the car and you can go back and look at the data and say that was 15G, you say, okay, that's what it feels like. You can't believe the amount of equipment on these things, the navigation equipment, the spare parts, the hydraulic jacks, when you think the car's finished, you find you've got about 200 kilos of stuff to go in, and it all has to work, you know, from sand ladders and shovels. So the list is about this long.